Hey everybody, welcome back to another severe weather center forecast video. Sorry for the long break. I've had a lot of exams and tests. However, they are over with. So we are going to get back into talking about severe weather and today we're going to be breaking down a pretty active pattern for severe weather, including a today and tomorrow slight risk and then a potential elevated risk for severe weather on Iowa. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So this is the SPC Day 1 outlook. As you can see, we have a pretty large slight risk of severe weather that extends from the Texas-Mexico border all the way back through western Oklahoma and into parts of Kansas. And this threat, basically main threats with this will include damaging winds and isolated large hail. And I'll get to the simulated radar, but we can expect a pretty large swath of severe weather throughout throughout mainly the slight risk. There will obviously will be some little isolated cells that could develop out in this marginal area back out here in Iowa, which you cannot see. But the main thing to talk about is just a slight risk for the potential for a spin up tornado or two. Nothing serious or significant. Again, that's going to be mainly back in this region, because as there is a dry line in place with a lot of moisture that is in place, which could bring up an isolated spin up cell. But nonetheless, there is a slight risk for today, and then heading into tomorrow there's another slight risk of severe weather, basically in the same place. This is the latest update for the SPC as of recording this. So basically, same slight risk, basically in the same area. Only difference is it doesn't. There's no slight risk up here, and this is just going to be for isolated to strong cells that if that develop, they'll just kind of move through here and die off. And will eventually turn into a mesoscale convective system overnight, which will bring up that damaging wind risk for today and tomorrow. So I'm gonna get right into the simulated radar. Here we go. So starting off, so we can expect cells to fire here pretty soon down here. This is one old model run as the newest one is coming in. However, it does not show a full breakdown of this area. So I'm just going to show this as this is very up to date. However, the main risk for a isolated spin up is right about through here, and you can kind of see we have some of these cells that do fire. However, if you notice, the main threat is as we head into later into the night, we start to develop a MCS or mesoscale convective system right up here, and that's going to bring some damaging winds to people that that obviously in the path. You can kind of see you have a little MCS that develops up here, and it kind of moves through, and eventually it forms a line down here, and eventually it brings a very it brings a line of strong to potentially severe storms by the time the line arrives near Dallas. Everything will begin to weaken out, and by early tomorrow morning, most people in this region over here can expect some rumbles of thunder to maybe some gusty winds and isolated hail. But like I said, the main slight risk threat for at least seeing some damaging winds and potentially large hail, it's going to be for when the supercells initially fire, or if any that do fire down in this region. We could see, some of those damaging winds, large hail, and isolated spin ups. With as we see with that cell right down there. But and then eventually it'll slowly transition into a gusty wind. It'll transition into a damaging wind and just damaging wind risk, which again, what isn't really even that strong to begin with. So I'm gonna go ahead and show tomorrow's risk, and then we're gonna get into a potential into a long range forecast. So here we go. So I'm now switching over to the NAM model. This is the newest updated model that shows both the rest of today's risk and then tomorrow's risk. The model run time and the in real life time is up in the upper left corner by the black bar. It also tells you what model we're using. So I'm gonna run this ahead. If we look at the times, this is Wednesday, right around 2 p.m. The Wednesday threat will be a evening to dinner time threat. You can see this is right around 8 9 o'clock. We have storms that fire pretty much in an isolated region, mainly throughout again that slight risk area. But we could see a few other storms and just some rainy showers. For example, some storms up there in Oklahoma, and we actually have some storms up here in Kansas that developed. But those should stay relatively below severe limits. However, those could bring some gusty winds up there, which actually will transition into an MCS. There is a large marginal risk for this area, so I do anticipate maybe an upgrade throughout some of up here, mainly just for this stronger line of storms that will develop into the overnight hours. But and then you can see as we push this or that this pushes into Thursday's kind of storm risk, and you can see the main risk is right there in Oklahoma by the Red River Valley. However, Wednesday's risk does seem very conditional for parts of mainly this, again parts of western Texas. However, we will see a stronger line of storms up here that will eventually form into a mesoscale convective system, which will bring some gusty winds or damaging winds and potential power outages to a large portion of people if affected by this. So that is the two risks today and tomorrow's risks. However, we're going to get into a long range forecast, which will bring up the possibility for a potential more elevated risk and more critical and more severe risk of severe weather that's coming in the future. So I'm going to switch over to that right now. So I'm going to be using the GFS model for this. Don't pay as much as attention to the date and time. Things are obligated and bound to change on this model. This is longer range. This is around medium to long range forecasting. However, I do want to. There is actually a growing confidence for some sort of more elevated, more severe risk of severe weather that could happen out here in parts of Iowa, Nebraska, southern Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, parts of those areas in the upcoming days and weeks here. We a lot more activity is expected to spark up in this region. Overall, in this region, just more activity as we head into May. More severe weather, more substantial severe weather than what we're seeing, for example, today and tomorrow. Again, everything should be taken seriously if needed, but this is more of an elevated risk as we head. So as we head out here into the future, this you can kind of see here. This is the main, at least. This is one concerning potential storm. This would suggest a potential outbreak. Well, this would suggest widespread severe weather, widespread severe, elevated and widespread severe weather, which could bring a multi-day event. As you can see, more potential severe weather with these two systems right there. And I'm going to show the service-based CAPE, which is basically storm juice, to put it simply, which basically storms feed off of. I'm going to show that here in a second. You can see this is the same system, just a little bit earlier. You have this system right here. Just a lot more activity is going to spark up basically as we head into the future. So we could see more substantial, more severe weather. If the best way to put it, we could see that in the near future. So I'm gonna switch over to the CAPE models to show you what I'm to really emphasize and show you what I'm talking to really emphasize and show you what I'm talking about. So this is the service-based CAPE model and the GFS model, and you can see there's going to be a lot of basically storm juice up in this area, which is also conveniently the elevated risk area. And in the next couple of weeks for severe weather, you can see, some days possibly pointing out to widespread severe weather across portions of the Midwest. So it'd be a classic Midwest plains like storm event that we've seen, and then you can kind of see the SPC has highlighted day 7 risk for this. However, much too early to talk about specifics. However, this is likely one of the reasons why they highlighted it and why I'm mentioning it is because we could see a potential multi-day severe weather events from these types of systems in the next couple of coming weeks. as we enter the prime severe weather season and stuff like that. So I just felt like so I included this just to kind of show what's out there and what's more is coming. So yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching, and that's really all I have for you guys today. So I will see everybody in the next severe weather center forecast. Goodbye.